Do you see, that was the problem with the Hebrew religion. Out of the chaos of that part of the world being a buffer state, they started to long for the perfect state, strong enough to keep its own integrity. And so its religion was accordingly, according to what it worshipped, longed for the security. So God became, quite simply, the perfect monarch. He had no king but God. And he had the character of a monarch, so a god of war, law, justice. And justice meant he judged with consequences for non-compliance. This was not some family structure. This was a state structure, the perfect state structure. It's an oxymoron. Perfection is that which preserves life. Well, they thought that the perfect state would preserve life and flourishing. It doesn't, because there is no God. There's a God that's in fact a world-type ruler. And that's a nightmare. They come and they go. They seek their own. And their own doesn't say that you're their children. It says that you're their subjects. That's different. That's a resource. Economics is born there. Do you see? Right back in that situation where you look to the state for your welfare. But you say to me, that's what civilization is, isn't it? The formation of the state. And the answer is yes. But civilization is not in itself what is life. It only supports life in as far as it can, in as far as civilization is possible. Life is relationship, and relationship, well, the best example we have is family. They actually feel for one another, they have compassion. They understand one another because they have continual, long-lasting relationships with one another. Life is relationship. And in this world, your security is relationship. And the relationship of the state, which doesn't have a God that is actually a person, cannot give the benefit of personal relationship. It's a committee or a person that's constantly changing. And it's a person that doesn't know you because it's, well, the state is immense compared to the family. Now, the unity of families is by having one God, yes. But it's not a worldly God, it's a God of love. And that's the difference that Jesus brought. You see, the rich young ruler thought that the commandments, the principles of life, were actually all about the social, how we relate to one another. No, it's not. That's just a secularity. Of course we relate to one another because we're in an economic situation. But that doesn't imply God, you see. God is a person. that unites, a permanent person that unites. Not only that, but if you see him as your heavenly dad, he has a very personal relationship. He knows you, which of course no earthly person can know, several million people under him in his country. So what seemed to be on track, which was Hebrew sort of culture, and probably a Hebrew culture around anything like 600 to 300 BC, basically worshipped a god that they called the state. Okay, it had some right trappings in the belief, namely that it was eternal and all-powerful and going to be ever victorious. So, he was God in that sort of understanding of things, but not Dad, not your dearest friend. On the contrary, especially with Persian influence, satanic spiritual beings and, angels too, you could be in the wrong quarter. You could end up in satanic domain, and in a sense you were being threatened with that if you didn't conform. A parent is not that. A loving parent, the ideal parent, is one who says, look, love, if you do this, you'll suffer. Please don't do this. I don't want you suffering. This is the way, walk ye in it. No, it's not eternal suffering if you choose it, but you will find out that you don't like the taste, and you won't eat it again. The eternal is not a stick that I'm beating you with, eternal evil, eternal damnation. Is to say, if you do that, this is what you suffer in doing that. And when you stop doing that, you stop suffering. Not that you carry on suffering forever because you deserve it in some sense. You don't. Not a case of deserving. It's a case of if you don't do this, then you get the benefit of not doing this. Any place, any time. You see, it's a loving relationship that brings up children to adulthood, not one that culls half the family because they don't come up to standard. You get to your bar mitzvah and say, well, sorry, you really don't qualify. We can't have adults like you around. We're having you executed. That's not the sort of God you want. And you can say, well, the world's not like that. No, but its God is, isn't it? It's a God of war. Well, it has to be to protect itself from other nations that would encroach. Yes, because you are valuing this world, and you're thinking of eternal life in terms of this world. It's not. You are life, not matter. You're not the body. Your body in terms of literal matter changes, on average every 7 years. And some of its parts change much more rapidly. You're identifying with the body, but that's not you. You is your values, your spirit. Or at least that's the best evidence we've got of you. You is probably in dimensions we've no conception of. It's a fantastic thing, a person, just as your God is. In fact, as most helpful Jesus' teaching story is, God and you are of the same substance. You're born of God. in some spiritual sense, but you have to be Gnostic. In other words, you have to think out of the box of what the words say, but in some sense what they imply intuitively. Your God is fantastic, way beyond some notion of a perfect ruler. He's perfect loving parent with perfect understanding, perfect ability from the point of view of the dimensions you live in at the minute, which are very simplistic. For this universe to exist, it must exist in something that's extraordinary. It can't exist in nothing, you know. Nothing doesn't give you opportunity to exist. Thought and imagination does, but even then it's constrained by what your experience has been. We're talking about creation from, well, we don't know what. It's not rational to say we can get all this creation from nothing. So why is it here? I don't know. Good. It means you're thrown back on trust, not knowledge. You cannot call it, I know. You can only say, I hope, and I trust accordingly. Why do I hope? Probably because of the experience I've had. Right from the first kindness of Mum and Dad, and my society, through to the present day. I can tell you why I hope, and I thank God that I do. Thank you, Heavenly Dad.